Welcome and good afternoon, or good evening if you're joining us, as some institutional representatives are located in other parts of the world. We have with us today participants from 5 countries, 16 states, Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., and nearly 200 institutions. I'm Madeline Yates, the Executive Director of Campus Compact Mid-Atlantic, and I want to welcome you to this conversation that we're co-sponsoring with Middle States. Please use the Q&A function during the webinar. And also, if you need closed captioning, there's a button on the bottom of your screen through which you can access that. And at the end of the event, I will remind you again of the opportunity to register for other events in this 5-part series of guided conversations. I'm very happy to welcome you on behalf of our board and our planning committee. This is the first webinar in a series of guided conversations with Middle States, and it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our other guest speakers, Dr. Heather Perfetti, President of the Middle States Commission on Higher Education, and if I may suggest, a social justice advocate in her own right, and a graduate of Frostburg State University in our network many moons ago. We also have Dr. Conway Turner, President at SUNY Buffalo State College, and under her leadership there, Buffalo State has been recognized as a Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching's community engaged classified institution. And in addition to the numerous boards and associations on which Kate serves, such as, and works with, such as AACU and ACE and the National Campus Compact, where she serves as chair, one of Kate's other long-term commitments is to serving on the board of directors of HOPE, an international non-governmental development organization in Haiti. And through that organization, Kate has spent extensive time in Haiti, traveling there approximately 30 times to support educational, medical, and community development needs. But I think what's critical there is learning to partner with a place-based community development initiative. And the factor of long-term commitment, not jumping in and jumping out of community development, but maintaining and sustaining that partnership through inevitable challenges and hurdles that simply accompany growth, development, and learning. Next, we have Ron Nowaczec, President of Frostburg State University, also an ACE Fellow and the chair of our own board of Campus Compact Mid-Atlantic. In addition to numerous national and regional boards, Ron also makes time to serve his local community in Western Maryland. Under his leadership, Frostburg State was nationally recognized for its commitment to community service, civic engagement, and they also are a leader in sustainable development. Last, I'm deeply honored and very pleased to introduce you to Dr. Maurice Taylor, Vice President for Academic Outreach and Engagement. And if you don't mind my saying so, Dr. Taylor is the senior leader among us, and I mean that with all of the respect I can confer. Dr. Taylor is the invisible glue that has undergirded this conversation. He has served for over a decade on Campus Compact Mid-Atlantic's Senior Advisory Group for Engagement, and has also served on multiple Middle States teams and led some teams. In fact, it was Dr. Taylor who helped frame our initial conversation with Dr. Perfetti fall a year ago at Bowie State University about the intersection of how civic and community engagement can actually be part of the process for achieving the Middle State standards. I'm very pleased also to be joined today with my colleague, Dr. Lori Worrell, Executive Director of Campus Compact of New York and Pennsylvania, who will also be assisting us with the question and answer part of our conversation. But why is this conversation so important right now amidst these extraordinary times? Before we launch into our discussion, I want to take a moment to frame the context. As we all know, we are amidst this braided crisis of the global pandemic, the resulting economic crisis, which is particularly hitting and challenging to the higher education sector, and the burgeoning anti-racist movement to create true racial and social justice. We are also simultaneously amidst an ever-present global economic crisis and an increasing apparent need for global understanding and cooperation in order to address collectively the critical issues of the 21st century. As higher education institutions, we have a role in that conversation. We have a role as a partner with other members of our larger local and global communities who are raising up these critical conversations. Our place-based regional compacts, Campus Compact of Mid-Atlantic, New York and Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, are situated at the intersection of this conversation of where higher education meets the needs of the world, partners with other entities in that change-making, systemic change process, and where higher education addresses the public purposes of higher education. Higher education is in the process of recreating itself from within to partner with our community partners and members to collectively create a better, more socially just and sustainable society. And how does that tie back with our middle states standards? That work is going on. It may be going on increasingly in the years to come. And how does that tie back with the middle states conversation? So without further ado, I will pass the baton to Heather Perfetti. And what on earth does this civic and community engagement conversation have to do with the work of middle states?
Great, thank you, Madeline, and thank you to our Campus Compact partners and to my fellow panelists. It is certainly an honor to be here with all of you. So I'm going to start with some conversation about the work of the Middle States Commission on Higher Education in terms of accreditation process. And then I'm going to talk more generally, just briefly, about why this matters and why it's important and how it connects to the work of our commission. So most of you know that accreditation can be the vehicle for driving institutional priorities, and we have reframed our processes as well as our standards to permit institutions more freely and liberally to drive their institutional priorities through our accreditation work and accreditation processes. So for institutions that are focused on civic and community engagement, not just for their students, but also for their faculty and staff, accreditation can be leveraged to support that kind of work, those kinds of initiatives, and those activities. And that's really critical. So I do want to remind our audience that our Vice President, Bob Bonfiglio, recorded a broadcast to walk everyone through the foundation of our accreditation cycle, because we didn't want to spend the bulk of the time here that we have, which is short at only an hour, to convey our accreditation expectations through our cycle of accreditation. But if you're new to our membership, or if you are less familiar with our accreditation work, we encourage you to access that broadcast, which is available at the Campus Compact website. And you should be sure to spend some time watching it. But we don't want to neglect process here today, because the process of self-study allows that focus for the entire college community on important initiatives like those associated with civic and community engagement. So much of the work of accreditation is tied to institution mission and goals. And so as institutions develop or continue to develop their work around community and civic engagement, understanding how well the institution is doing supporting those activities, or where improvements could possibly be undertaken, is something that can be accomplished through the work of accreditation. Most importantly, what we see is as the college community comes together to look at the work around these initiatives, it becomes a great source of pride and discussion across the college community and for the community that is served by the institution. Institutions should view their work of accreditation through a variety of lenses as opposed to simply one of compliance. And as our institutional representatives are well aware, our commission commits to peer review and quality through a number of important lenses. Yes, institutional accountability, but even more importantly, self-appraisal, improvement, and innovation. And because we're not prescriptive in our standards, it allows institutions to have great flexibility in incorporating community and civic engagement initiatives through the lens of all of the standards with our commission. So as you think about how your institution defines your work, the goals that you set relating to that work, and how best to measure it, that is all supported through accreditation activities and through the commission standards for accreditation. So most generally, why does civic and community engagement matter? And why does the initial perception appear so disconnected from the work of accreditation to some? It truly matters for all of us as educators to contribute to a more just society through service. Our institutions and our students are important and critical members of the communities that they serve. And we know as a commission that when students are well served through our institutions, we strengthen our communities, and put simply, we just contribute to the greater good of society. So with that, I'm going to turn the programming over to Dr. Kate Conway Turner, who is an executive member of our commission, and like so many others, has served in the critical role of peer evaluation and peer review, serving and leading teams at our institutions. Kate?
Thanks, Heather. And I'd like to reflect a bit in my comments on what the importance of civic and community engagement is for our campus, Buffalo State College. Buffalo State is getting ready to celebrate its 150th anniversary, and we have had a very long history of understanding and celebrating and embracing the public good. And the public good is not only about the education, the academic education, as important as that is, but it's also about creating the environment for our students to learn to be the leader that will serve in their community as they move forward, as they complete that very important degree and move out into the world. And so in doing that, the issue of civic and community engagement has always been a foundational and important part of the education of Buffalo State. So we do have an Office of Civic Engagement that connects our students, our faculty, our staff to all kinds of organizations throughout our community. And we do a lot of it through civic service learning, but also through just community service in general. And so why is that important? That the duality of not only being an expert in your area, but seeing that the importance of your contribution to the broader community, your local community, the community that you'll go back to, the international community, wherever you manage to land post your degree is so important and is a foundational part of our education here at Buffalo State. We are an anchor institution in the city of Buffalo, the second largest city in the state of New York. And so there are many opportunities. We partner with dozens of organizations throughout Buffalo. And so as we connect our students so that they can see, as our faculty connect our students actually, so that they can see how their work dovetails in the important complex questions that we're trying to resolve, is a perfect training ground for our students to understand how they can make a difference, as well as contributing to lifting up the community around them. We are an urban engaged campus. So we take that quite seriously. Our mission is about urban engagement. And so as we go through the Middle States process, understanding that urban engagement and what it means, and actually allowing us to assess to what extent are we meeting that urban engaged mission is very important. So we can do it through service learning, we can do it through community engagement, and we can do it in a variety of ways that really help us to articulate that who we say we are is what we're doing, and that we're actually assessing it and improving on what we're doing, which is also very much a part of the Middle States piece as well. We're a very diverse community in Buffalo. We're also a resettlement community. So not only are we diverse for generations, but we're also always bringing in new voices into our community. And so the important aspect of helping our students and community understand the richness of diversity and really working with diverse people from all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of economic backgrounds and all kinds of languages is an important lesson that we want our students to really understand as they move through our work and moving forward. So civic engagement is a very important part of what we do now, what we've done in the future, tied to our mission, tied to how we continue to grow and extend our mission. And it allows us to be carefully done through an organizational structure that privileges the importance of it and provides the key staff and personnel to link our mission with our students and faculty to make a difference. And so that's a bit about why it's important to us. And I'm going to toss it to Ron so he can talk a little bit about how he sees it happening at Frostburg.
Thanks, Kate, and I appreciate that. And I want to echo some of the things you talked about when you mentioned environment. I think one of the things that's going to be consistent among all of us, and I think our colleagues, the environment that students are in today is one where I think they want to get engaged, and is the university providing that opportunity for those students to get engaged in a meaningful fashion. You know, we oftentimes hear, I know we hear this at Frostburg State, that students are interested, yes, how is this going to help further my career, get it started, whatever. But the bigger mission, I think, for all of us includes educating responsible leaders and engaged citizens. And civic engagement it's a win-win situation, I think, for all of us, in that we get students involved and excited about what they're interested in doing and connecting it to the community. And again, working through Middle States, I think the important part here is showing how that really is making a difference in the education of the students. Not just saying we're doing it, but how is it making a difference? For us, you know, we're engaged quite a bit in certain courses where engagement, civic engagement, service learning is part of the courses. It's part of the learning environment. So clearly it's part of our learning outcome. And I think one of the most important parts of that learning outcome is self-reflection on the part of the students about how has it changed what they're thinking about, how has it changed how they're behaving, how has it changed what their future is going to be like once they graduate. It also, and again, what Kate touched on a little bit, I also will mention is we have an Office of Civic Engagement, which really helps student organizations, because we have student organizations that are committed to service, and it helps them document their service, find opportunities for the service, and then also, again, reflect on how it fits with their mission. One thing we're especially proud of is with AmeriCorps, we have an Echo Stars program, which is a living learning community for first-year students that students who commit up to 300 hours of service during the year, live together in one residence hall, earn scholarships that can help them later in life, but most importantly, help with that transition from high school to college and help them address one of their passions, which is this idea of civic engagement and service. And again, I think getting back what Kate says, it's infused within the environment of the campus. It's not an add-on. It's not something that's there for a few students. You know, we see it in terms of volunteer work with our students. And my role sometimes is to bring these things to our Office of Civic Engagement. Sometimes there are nonprofits asking us, we need people to help us with an event we're putting on. And for the students, it gives them an opportunity to interact with civic leaders and to get an appreciation for what goes on outside of the university. Other cases, it may be helping them with their website or helping them with social media. people recognize the fact, again, as Kate mentioned, the anchor institution. We're an anchor institution here in Western Maryland that serves as a public institution the community as much as we can. It also, I think, most importantly, also gives you opportunity for leadership opportunities. We're very much involved in a national coalition building institute with racial and social justice, helping students channel some of the energy that they have into meaningful dialogue and discussions. We have a SLOOP Institute, which really does focus on learning. It's named after one of our faculty, well-known faculty member here who passed away a number of years ago, and the students got together to create a leadership institute that gives these students the opportunity to do some things in the community that's guided by the faculty and staff to help it become a very meaningful event. And lastly, I'll mention the fact that it transforms into what we see going on in student government, as well as student organizations, where we find in today's world, diversity, equity, and inclusion being important questions for students. They want to give back, they want to understand, they want to make it a better world. The learning process that we do here at the university of guiding that learning, I think, is very important. And it's part of our strategic plan, and it's part of then what we really are analyzing as we go through our accreditation process. How are we doing? What is that scorecard, and how can we do better? So those are a few ideas of what we're doing at Frostburg State. And I will now turn over to Maurice. Maurice?
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate the opportunity here to share a little bit about what Morgan State University is doing in the way of civic and community engagement. I also want to take a few moments to talk a little bit about this unique conversation that we're having today with Middle States and the Campus Compacts of Campus Compact Mid-Atlantic, Campus Compact of New York and Pennsylvania, and the Campus Compact of New Jersey. Morgan State University is one of 4 public historically Black colleges and universities in the state of Maryland. Morgan is not the oldest of those 4 institutions, but it is the most comprehensive. By Maryland legislative statute, Morgan is Maryland's preeminent public urban research university. The mission, if you look at the mission of Morgan State University, the very first sentence is Morgan serves the community, the region, the globe, the state. And it does this by empowering and supporting its graduates. So immediately you look at the mission, already 2 of Middle State's 7 standards or accreditation are implicated. The mission and the support for student education, student services. So how does Morgan go about meeting its mission, engaged in community and civic engagement? Let me talk about 4 things quickly that Morgan is engaged in. Of course, you've already heard from Kate and Ron. Morgan too has a Office of Community Service, in which we have been, that has the very unique history of purposely bringing the students from across the university, not just 1 or 2 majors, but from across the university to be engaged in mentoring in the local elementary, middle school, and high school. We have students engaged in a variety of community health projects, business projects. So the Office of Community Service is one of those unique areas. As Ron said, the Morgan, like so many others, this is not an add-on in terms of the work that Morgan does. We have 9 colleges, schools, academic colleges and schools excluding the graduate school. And each of those 9 academic colleges and schools are have some aspect of clinical or some form of internship, cooperation, cooperative agreement. So even if there wasn't a Middle States or a campus compact, Morgan would still be engaged by the work of its colleges and schools in community outreach. We have been a member of Campus Compact for the better part of a decade, and Morgan State faculty, students have been engaged in a variety of projects through the Campus Compact. We've had about 9 or so VISTA volunteers to assist us in these initiatives that are ranging from financial literacy to health disparity. And even as we speak, the School of Architecture and Planning is partnering with the Neighborhood Design Center to do outreach in low-income areas to assist in the planning. So Morgan is engaged in civic and community activities across the campus. We were, most recently, for example, we were an election site center, and as a consequence, now I heard this from the horse's mouth, so to speak, that Morgan, the center, the election center on campus was the largest, had the largest number of persons coming to vote in Baltimore City. So we were the largest election center. And right now we are, at Morgan is planning to be a vaccination site for the COVID once the vaccinations take place in Maryland. So we have this long history of in community engagement. I'll say a little bit more a little later on when we talk about the justice. Let me just say a word or two about how important I think this conversation and these conversations, these subsequent conversations are. I have served in my career as in Middle States. I've served on 5 Middle States teams. I've chaired a team in addition to chairing both the periodic review at Morgan and the most recent 2018 self-study. And I've been Morgan's representative to the Campus Compact. First, Maryland, DC Campus Compact. It expanded, now it's the Campus Compact Mid-Atlantic. And what's clear is that the membership of the Campus Compact in the Mid-Atlantic, well over 38 institutions. And then you add the Campus Compact for New York and Pennsylvania and the Compact for New Jersey. And what you're really talking about is an overlay of the same institutions that are members of the Middle States Commission on Higher Education and the Compact. We're really talking about the same institutions. And we're talking about how do these institutions meet in what they are doing with the Campus Compact. What's the overlay with respect to the standards of accreditation? That's pretty clear to me that the work we do in the Compact is among the ways that we demonstrate either one or more of the 7 standards. Used to be 14, now it's down to 7 standards. How does what we do through Campus Compact meet those requirements for accreditation as spelled out by Middle States. So I'm excited about the conversation, not simply my participation. I, of course, love to talk about Morgan's involvement, but I think the bigger issue here is how do we serve the membership of both Middle States and members of the various campus compacts.
Thank you, Maurice. That's just a wonderful framing and invitation. So Laurie, why don't you lead us through some of the questions that we have for our panelists?
Of course. Thank you all for your wise comments. It's been really interesting to listen to everybody here. I think, you know, we're in a peculiar moment, right? There's this perfect storm of public health crisis and the pandemic that has fed into an economic challenges, if not crisis, and coupled with some significant mobilization around social and racial injustices. So my question then is, why are civic and community engagement especially important to your institutions now at this moment, especially when so much is virtual? I think just because we're in the same state, I'm going to toss it to Kate first.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things which is really clear about all of the crises that you just mentioned, the pandemic and racial upheaval, unemployment, and so forth, that it's disproportionately hurting people that were already stumbling. And so it's not that everyone is not affected, but the people that were already facing extreme difficulty are stumbling the most. And so it's so important to understand that and recognize that there was already plenty of work to be done. There was plenty of connections for us to make in our institutions and within our communities before. And then now we see those gaps even greater. So people that perhaps were having some food insecurity now can't feed themselves at all. People that were stumbling and not having a full-time job to maintain their family now have no job at all. And so the critical nature of these crises has really made it so important that we really look carefully at what can be done. What are the solutions? How can we handle the immediate? But even more important, the careful thought so that we don't find ourselves in this position in the future, so that some of these gaps can be changed and closed, so that in the future when something else happens, and there will be something else in the future, that we do not find the most disadvantaged people really suffering the most. So campuses are really great at both problem solving. They're also great at convening important voices to really grapple with it, to make sure that we can have those difficult discussions that we have seen not be able to really occur within many of the political discussions. We can do that. We know how to have civil conversations on really difficult issues. And so the importance of higher education right now could never be as important as it is when we're facing all of these issues, because we can be a part of the convening voice to bring civil and important discussion to it. We also know that higher education is more diverse now than it has ever been before. At our campus, 55% of our students are from underrepresented groups, but even for those campuses that are more or less, we know that the moment right now when we're looking at the next generation of people coming through, they're far more diverse. They come with diverse opinions, diverse backgrounds. They understand some of these experiences more keenly than perhaps many people did before. And so it is really important for us to really grapple with that moment, bring those important diverse voices in a way together so that we can make a difference, so that we can close some of the gaps and wrestle some with the difficult issues. And I would say one more thing is that to clearly understand what it means for society to be a just society, an inclusive society. So we've had a number of images which are artificial. So how can we as higher education help people understand what it really means to be an inclusive, equitable society, and then what are some of the steps to get there? And so I think it's a very important time for higher education in general and our campuses that are already devoted to community engagement to step up and be a leading voice in the discussions that we're having and that we need to frame and that we need to work through.
Excellent, thank you. Ron, how would you respond either to Kate's comments or to the question at hand?
Yeah, thanks, Lori. You know, I think we would be, and I agree with Kate. I think the one thing she mentioned that I think was very important was the civil discussion. We will be letting our students down. We will be derelict if we don't deal with the issues of racial and social justice. We have students on our campus, and again, we have over 40% of our students of color. But we have students on our campus that are coming to us and saying, I need to understand. I don't know why things are happening. There's anxiety, there's uncertainty, there's a lack of being able to frame the issues that are going on. Quite frankly, as we've seen, social media is not always presenting, oftentimes not presenting accurate information. Students are turning to us to say, help me understand, help us understand what's going on and how we should respond and what are the proper actions and what are the actions, what are the potential actions we can consider. So I think as a university, if we don't step up, we're being derelict in our responsibilities. And probably one of the most important educational aspects that we have as an institution. And you know, the book knowledge will come, but for the students right now, the idea of wanting to be part of a functioning society that's fair, equitable, inclusive, how does that occur? We need to be helping students deal with those questions, and we may not have the answers for many of those instances, but if we don't address those and don't engage the students in a meaningful fashion, and again, I come back to Kate's comment about being civil, where in many cases we're seeing in public, especially on social media, the lack of civility, we're sending the wrong message. And so I think this is where we really do need to step up. As I tell my students, or tell students on our campus, you know, I was a student in college in the 60s. During that period with the Vietnam War, civil rights, things going on, they're living during a different period now, and we need to help them navigate that as they move forward.
Really calls on our institutions to teach our students how to be problem solvers, authentic problem solvers, when the answers aren't readily apparent, right? Yeah. Yep. Maurice, how would you like to add to that, the conversation?
Thank you, Lori. So from the perspective of a historically Black college and university, there's a little bit of a difference here, a little bit of a significance here. I mentioned earlier that Morgan's mission was to serve. My experience is that more important than the mission of Morgan is Morgan's DNA. So Morgan was founded officially in 1867, but that conversation began in the basement of Sharp Street Church in Baltimore in 1866. That's a year after the Civil War. And so the founding of Morgan is part of its DNA to serve this community of freed slaves. It's no incident, it's no coincidence that Morgan was founded in the basement of a church. It was pastors that came together to initially start a biblical Methodist pastors that came to start a biblical institute, quickly became a college that was not simply limited to men. The other sort of interesting fact here is I mentioned earlier that there were 4 public HBCUs in Maryland. Morgan and the United Methodists that founded Morgan were so pleased with what they had done at Morgan that they did an extension of Morgan, Prince Anne Academy, that subsequently became the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. So this DNA that we are talking about in terms of service is unique in the founding of Morgan and other HBCUs. Today, Lori, the issue for Morgan, and I would say any university, college that has a significant number of African-American, brown, and Black students, is what we're seeing is the confluence of really three things. The economic impact that the pandemic is having on the students and their parents. So many already who are receiving support for Pell means that they are, and their families are pretty much on the edge anyway. And so the pandemic exacerbates that economic disparity, health disparities. One of the things that Morgan had to be aware of is that we couldn't just shut down the university, even though our classes are this semester and likely much of next semester will be predominantly, when I say predominantly, it's really almost exclusively, except for a few courses online. But we couldn't just shut the university down and say, okay, all of you students go home. We have students with extenuating circumstances where if that is really much more problematic for them to be home and or homeless, or be home and or subject to the digital divide, or to be home and subject to other kinds of distractions that interfere with their education. And that's the third element of this, is the impact on education and the things that the university had to do to meet this current demand. Let me end with just a few more aspects of this DNA at Morgan. We're familiar with the A&T students that sat in 1960 at the Woolworth's lunch counter. And I think it's important to know, and we accept that the students at Woolworth got the credit they should, but actually Morgan students sat in 1955 in downtown Baltimore to integrate Reed's drugstore. So we've been at this business a while. Most unique, it's evidence of the past is the present. In 1963, Morgan students, a gang, was part of big sit-in effort to integrate Northwood Shopping Center, mass arrests, mass jailing. Now Morgan owns half of that Northwood Shopping Center and is working with the developer to redevelop the other half of that center. So we continue to fight the injustice. It is not a new struggle for us, and I would dare say not a new struggle for any of the 105 HBCUs. The pandemic and the issues today are really just an extension of the work that we've already been doing as an institution, as one of the 4 public HBCUs in Maryland.
Thank you. So Heather, my question to you is a slightly different one from your vantage point as the head of your association, the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. Why would you say to a president or to a self-study committee that civic and community engagement is particularly important at this time, given sort of this, as I said, perfect storm that we're in.
A couple of things that I will add, and since I have three exceptional Middle States Commission institutions sitting here and highlighting some of their work in this regard, I do want to point out that our commission is launching a podcast called Pillars of Change, and it is designed to feature the exceptional and inspirational work that is being done at our colleges and universities throughout our membership. And so it can be found on our website. It is launching, in fact, today. And Kate, I have to say, was the first person we interviewed as part of that podcast. And it is a way for us to highlight the work that is being done across our institutions. And so we invite all of our audience here to listen and to let us know of some exceptional work that is happening across the membership for our commission, because we are looking for future guests to feature on the podcast. But it is one way that we can bring together these voices that you've heard all three of the other panelists talk about, how critical the voices are. But most importantly, it's a call to action, and it's intended to be a call to action, so the voices can carry into the work of institutions in real meaningful ways and have impact on students and communities. And so I will tie that back to your question, Lori, about self-study and the working groups. As institutions look at their priorities, they can use the self-study process to reevaluate their standing with those activities and to launch some of those priorities differently, to ensure that, as Kate had mentioned, that the assessment work is being done. So if there are gaps in meeting the institutional mission or goals, there can be some conversations about appropriate resourcing or where things may need to shift to better support the institutional work around civic and community engagement. But what we have found through this process of self-study is it is a forced pause of sorts that gives the entire college community deeper insights into the work. Some may be more familiar with that than others, but this is a way to level the knowledge base across an institution and for everyone to get really excited about future initiatives that the institution wants to support and drive moving forward. And that's a very different conversation than demonstrating compliance with the commission standards. And we want that conversation to be different. You do what needs to be done as a working group and as a steering committee, and you will leverage the work of the institution. And at the same time, you'll also show us how you're meeting our standards.
Great answer. Thank you. Thank you. I'm wondering if you might, we're going to switch it a little bit, and I'm wondering if the three folks from institutions might reflect on how membership in Campus Compact and especially like with your local Campus Compact has helped you meet some of the criteria of the self-study process, and how it has helped you as an institution be maybe more effective overall. And I'm going to start with Ron.
Let me just weave in. We had another question in the chat that said that invited to expand on the value and opportunities for higher education institutions serving as election sites, COVID testing sites, and vaccine sites, but using that as an example to answer the question that Lori just posed.
Yeah, I think she threw it to me first, so let me just quickly, because I'm being careful of the time here too. I think the biggest thing for me is it helps for the communication process among institutions to learn from each other. I know Heather will agree with this, that many times a self-study, really you learn a lot when you're on a visiting team and learn from each other. And Campus Compact as a convener brings opportunities together for individuals from different institutions to talk about what they're doing, how they're approaching problems, what solutions they may be finding, which helps make it real and actually richer for the institutions. Madeline, the questions you asked, I think, is important in that the question was asked by one of the attendees about serving as a site for voting or the COVID testing, vaccine, so forth. It shows the commitment that the institution is part of the community. Getting back to Kate's comment earlier about being an anchor institution, and I think for all three institutions, we take pride in the fact that we are committed to the community. We have resources that the community may not have, and we need to make sure that those are available to the community. And again, it shows a sign not only to the community, but to our students of how we are living and walking the talk to be engaged with the community.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Ron more. And I think that oftentimes when you're on your campus and you're thinking about moving into a different direction, that sometimes the value of another campus that has a similar philosophy or a similar perspective can really just make all the difference. So I know that on our campus, one of the things that we see is that our students are engaged in service learning, are retained at a higher level, and are graduating at a higher level. And so that is just something that other campuses who are trying to grow that ability understand, well, this is important for this reason. And so perhaps someone who on your campus does not intrinsically believe in sort of the civic engagement piece, but they certainly want to see the success of other students. And so I think we can really learn from each other about how these things are making a difference on our community. And to the election side and various things, I think they are so really important, not only to show our connection to our community, but to model for our students the importance of these very important pieces of our community. Voting should be a bipartisan thing. Everybody should want everybody to vote, regardless of who you want to vote for. And so being able to lift that for our students to see and for them to understand how these are things we intrinsically believe in, regardless of the politics of it all. It shouldn't be about the politics. It should be about the importance of the community. And I think that we're able to model that when we bring these things on campus or begin to bring them on campus, like we all hope to be vaccination sites as well.
We have another question in the chat. I'm mindful of the time. I'd like to sort of sneak some things in here.
Lori,
Yes, yes.
let me jump in as part of that answer.
Okay.
So in 2017, one of the vice presidents for Middle States, Heather Ellie Fogarty, Morgan's liaison to the Middle States, came down and met with the team as we were working on the steering committee, as we were working on our self-study. And I remember one of the things that Ellie said that stuck with me, Lori, was that Middle States was interested in what do you know and how do you show? In other words, what can you tell us about your institution and how do you demonstrate that? And I thought she incorporated that in that phrase so much. How do you know, and what do you know, and how do you show? So the point is that any institution in Middle States that has a campus compact is engaged in civic and community engagement. Look, you would be crazy not to have that person on your steering committee. Is one of the ways that you demonstrate how do you know, what do you know, and how do you show. And since the community and civic engagement can run across any or all of the 7 standards, you certainly want that liaison of those persons engaged in campus compact, community, and civic engagement on your steering committee. With regards to, and in this regard then, the voting, vaccinations, the role on campus, Morgan, like many of the other colleges and universities in Maryland, Morgan is a member of the Maryland Higher Education Commission COVID Advisory Committee. We've been meeting roughly every 2 weeks since May. And I mentioned that because, again, the role that Morgan plays in all of this is somewhat unique in that both in terms of testing, vaccinations, and this whole medical rollout of tests and vaccinations, the African American community, I don't think I'm telling any secrets, has good reason to be suspicious of government initiatives and where it comes to testing, medical treatment, and data collection. And so the role that Morgan, and not exclusively Morgan, but I'm simply saying in this context, is not just service, but it's a question of trust. Can we trust the information that's being shared with us? And as Kate suggested, colleges and universities can serve that role in this initiative. And I think for those urban-based institutions and HBCUs, minority-serving institutions, they have an enhanced role to play in communicating both the advantages and allaying some of the fears that are prevalent in our communities.
Thank you. Madeline, we have about 4 minutes. How are we doing? Is there time for another question? You're on mute, dear.
I just wanted to acknowledge that several questions continuously are coming in, all of which have value. So what we're going to try to do is type up some summary notes following this webinar and make that available to all of the registrants. And we will try to reply to the degree possible to those who have included their names so that we can address your questions after the fact. But I'd like to give people literally 30 seconds, 45, to give some final comments with an eye to the questions that have come in, and then we'll wrap it up and remind people that our next webinar will be another opportunity to continue to address these questions together. I don't think that there are any pat answers. That's not the point. The point is to engage in the conversations together. So Heather, do you have any final comments for everyone?
Thank you, Madeline. And I will answer one of the questions because I know it's been posted and sitting there throughout the event. I do just want to reiterate that our standards allow every institution to leverage civic and community engagement as an institutional priority through self-study, through our processes, as tied to our accreditation standards. And I think we all recognize that the specificity relating to this may not be found word for word within the standards. And so we have this balance in our commission with not being prescriptive to be deferential to mission. But we certainly recognize there are pieces throughout the standards where these topics are directly relevant and on point and incorporated within the standards. I will also just note we have to do a standards review. And as a reminder, our standards come from our members. So when we come out to all of you to review the standards, if you see something that's missing, give us that feedback. It certainly gets considered by our commission.
Thank you. Well, again, I truly, deeply appreciate the wisdom on this panel and all of you joining us for this important conversation. This is part of a series of 5 conversations. We will be delving in greater depth for a deeper dive into standards 1 through 7 at the subsequent next 3 of the guided conversations. The next one will be January 20th. And then the final one will focus more on Carnegie classification and weaving standards together with our community and civic engagement effort. So again, thank you all, and adelante.